Activities Officer position.
Student Activities Officer. The Student Activities Officer supports and develops engagement and inclusivity in extracurricular activities at the University of York, including societies, media, raising and giving, volunteering, and other events. The Student Activities Officer represents more than 200 student groups to the university, lobbying for their interests and making sure that they receive the recognition that they deserve. And we will be kicking off the Activities Officer interviews with Alex Potts, who is joining me, Beth Hardisty. Thank you very much for joining us here on Candidate Interview Night. So you've made a point in your manifesto to talk about the fact that, you know, there's a variety of student interests within the activities realm. And one of your things, unlike some of the others, is you've not really focused too greatly on the idea of campus club nights and those sorts of things. Yes. Why do you think you've chosen to do that?
Well, I come from, so a little bit of background about myself. I spent a year and a half working in Salvation in town. So I know a lot about nightclubs. I know a lot about the organisation and everything that goes into them. To be frank, I don't know if turning RKC into a nightclub permanently while keeping it as an event space is particularly achievable within the year that I would have as activities officer. I think it's a worthwhile thing to look into on a maybe even just once a week on a Saturday night, for example. But I think turning it permanently into a nightclub, it's already a licensed venue, we should bear in mind, the lounge. So it's not impossible. However, it's not something I've decided to focus on. I've decided to focus a little bit on, there are a lot of students who do not wish to participate exactly in that drinking culture. And I think part of my thing is not alienating them.
And you speak a lot about working with other officers, other
Yes.
members that would potentially be involved. When you're talking about kind of involving liberation officers and networks about sort of tackling concerns and complaints, this is already, I mean, USU does already come into criticism for being quite a bureaucratic process.
Yes.
Do you think that involving more and more people to act as these middlemen, do you think that's actually going to be beneficial, or do you think it may slow down the process?
I don't think it would necessarily slow down the process. I think it would give people a bit more, I think it would give societies and committees a more approachable person to go to, rather than taking the immediate first step of navigating to USU. I think giving people the approachable, you know, okay, we are quite concerned about how people are being treated in the society. How can we help? We're quite concerned about how accessible our society is at the minute. What guidance can we get for that?
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things though where with this like extra involvement, you've also spoken about it in terms of getting people to join these societies. With these sorts of approachability, that's going to be a huge issue when we're coming out of the pandemic. How do you think you can address the impact that COVID has had on recruitment for societies, as well as just general involvement?
Yes, I think part of it, the reason why societies are struggling with recruitment right now is the lack of discoverability. There's obviously nothing that's happening on campus, and a lot of online events for societies are being advertised internally and through their mailing list. So I think, obviously, as we come out of the pandemic, I have hopes that things might be back to vaguely normal by September. That is going to alleviate slightly. Part of it, I would like to perhaps give an online platform for societies to advertise their events more broadly. I think I've also spoken about having, particularly in September, a series of inter-society mixes. One of my biggest memories of first year was Geek Fest, which brought together a lot of the, well, for want of better terms, geekier societies. People, mainly particularly Doug Sock, Gary Sock, for example, countless others, Doc Sock, who have very much shared interests. And so recruiting is probably the wrong term, but giving people the space to discover societies that they may also be interested in, given their initial, or even if they know they want something geeky, but they don't know what specifically, and ditto for many other varieties of societies.
And another thing you've brought up is this idea that these societies would be able to kind of, you know, put up things over the long university holidays. Of course, this does seem like something that is beneficial, and of course, you know, some societies do things over the holidays, you know, if there's a cultural event or something like that. Is there not an argument that a lot of people can find, if they are in organizational positions, that, you know, running a society takes a lot of work, and if they are using these holidays meant for potentially revision and stuff like that, being put under pressure to put on these big events and put on these online things may just turn it into more of a job than maybe something to enjoy?
That's completely fair. But I think in terms of, obviously, we're not expecting societies to go on, you know, keep running the timetable all the way through. Even if it's just one or two events, or even if it's just one event during the holidays midway through, like, or even just an informal catch up for members of that society or for people interested in it. I think if it doesn't require that much organisation on the behalf of the committees, that's much more beneficial for everyone involved.
Yeah, and one of the things that has also happened across the pandemic is you've had a lot of new societies spring up, all waiting for that ratification in March. One of the more controversial societies that did get or go towards the ratification process was Turning Point UK, due to their sort of political history. Do you think, as activities officer, you would take a more hardline, kind of more managed role to looking at what societies are kind of, which societies are being ratified, or do you think that every society should have the ability to be ratified?
I think there's obviously a big conversation around Turning Point was on free speech. However, one of my big tenets is that freedom, just because somebody has the freedom to say what they wish to say, that does not necessarily mean that they should get a platform to do so. But yes, there are some arguments of, it's all the way of saying, I think as a union, we should be giving that scrutiny to societies because as ultimately they are a part of the union, and whilst people are free to say whatever thou willst on the street, that does not necessarily that doesn't entitle you to a platform within the university.
And another thing that, of course, gets spoken a lot about, you know, a little bit of hubbub again, is these Freshers Week. And that's something that you see a lot of candidates and activities speaking about, what it might look like next year, seeing as we didn't really have a normal one this year. You spoke about the College Freshers Week wristband and the fact that people who maybe aren't partaking in the club nights should maybe be able to find free or discounted student tickets. As so many of these college committees kind of get a lot of their funding for the year and a lot of their sort of financial support from these Freshers Week wristbands, do you think that college committees would be willing to provide this, seeing as this is often a huge source of income for them?
I think the thing is, a lot of non-drinking students, or a lot of students who, for whatever reason, do not want to take part in the club nights, would otherwise not purchase any sort of freshers wristband or go to any sort of freshers event whatsoever. Whereas what I'm proposing is more, I mean, the club nights will hopefully in September still be there. The club nights will, you know, I'm not taking anything away from the club nights. I'm more providing a space for people who are not wanting to take part in those club nights, the space to still meet people socially, to still, you know, discover about the university.
And if you could kind of give like a 10-second reason, just one sentence reason as to why people should vote for you, what do you think that would be?
I think I've spent a lot of my time at York doing anything and everything. Like I said, I've worked 2 part-time jobs. I've done jury service. I've been chair of the society for a year. However, I think I'm good at multitasking. I'm good at trying to see everything. I'm good at seeing what needs doing and doing it whilst, yeah.
Thank you very much for talking to us and joining us on URY. And of course, you are the first of many activities candidates, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more from you on debate night this coming Friday in quite a large field. But for now, we're going to go to Maeve Schaffer, who's going to be talking to yet another activities candidate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Student